Hello and welcome to ORF Middle East once again. It is my absolute pleasure to have with me Mr. Marcelo Brito. Mr. Marcelo is the COP30 Special Envoy for Subnational States of the Amazon and the Executive Secretary for the Legal Amazon Consortium of States in Brazil. So welcome, Mr. Brito.
My pleasure. I'm really happy to be here with you. What a great opportunity to talk a little bit about COP, Brazil, and so on.
Thank you. And thank you especially for coming all the way from Abu Dhabi to our office space. So this is really an honor and a pleasure for us. I think the first question for you would be one that's on everyone's mind. What can we expect from the COP in Brazil this year? It is being touted in many ways as the implementation COP. How so? How is it going to be different from all the unfulfilled pledges and commitments we've heard at the COP all these years? How is Brazil really planning to push the needle and move the conversation forward?
Well, good question. Of course, we have to bear in mind the situation of the world today, the geopolitical tensions that we are living on. It's hard to know that the U.S. is out of the table, so we only can regret not having the most powerful country in the world sitting with us. But having said that, we still have all the other, 196, 95 countries that are members of the UNFCCC that are really want to move on.
Yeah.
Have said that, we know that the situation don't allow us to bring any new conversation to the table, any new negotiation to the table. And knowing that, the COP president, Ambassador André Correia do Lago, came with this wonderful idea with his team, and he took a look what was done in the past 29 COPs. And he found out almost 400 promises, pledges that were agreed among the countries. And he took off 30 out of those. And we have action plans working around these 30 promises. And we want to present to the countries as a implementation system. So what we're trying to say that this should be a COP of implementation and not a COP for new negotiations or to bring new things on the table. The situation of the world today asks us to implement, to move on. I think everyone is tired of talking without action. So now it's time for action, hopefully.
Excellent. Well, that's a great note. And it's also interesting that Brazil this year is hosting, of course, the COP, but also the BRICS. It has the BRICS presidency as well. How do you see both the COP and the BRICS in some sense reinforce their agendas and in such a way to be able to advance climate action and energy transition goals for the Global South more specifically?
This has been a very fortunate year for Brazil because despite COP, BRICS, we also hosted the G20 meeting in Rio. So rarely you see a country holding three very important international gatherings like Brazil this year. And starting with the G20, we brought some very new things. So for the first time in history, we have a discussion on bioeconomy among the G20. Mm-hmm. So we were able to include a tax on bioeconomy signed by all the 20 countries present, plus the other invited countries. So very important. And then came the BRICS meeting. The BRICS has shown its importance, as we can see the attention got by the American government that is really talking about BRICS lately. I think it's a new idea of not only development, but a new idea on multilateralism that are bringing together specific countries from different regions in the world, but most of them having like the same look ahead in terms of development. We are almost everyone developing countries. We have some very rich ones, but also other countries that are still struggling, like Brazil, like South Africa. But putting this group together, it was set a pathway for exchange of ideas, exchange of trade, financial aspects, and so on. So it's a great coincidence to have all these three events in Brazil, especially following what we expect for the coming years. You know, G20 is going to South Africa, so it's also happening in the Global South. COP is going to Australia, so also happening in the Global South. So it's a wonderful coincidence for us.
Excellent. Mr. Brito, I think your role as a special envoy for subnational states is so crucial because local communities and sub-federal and subnational states and authorities and institutions are most often, if not always, the first responders when it comes to any calamity, particularly a climate-related stress or distress. How do you see, your role, and what do you envision rather subnational governments? How do you think we can empower them and empower local communities to take greater action and engage more to be able to support national priorities on climate adaptation? And in many ways, how do you see their role rather being able to transform a lot of the national level policies into local action plans?
Well, once more, I want to congratulate the Brazilian government and the COP presidency for having this idea of having someone connecting with the subnationals. Because what we see, like in COPs and any other international conference, you have the national government setting agreements. But in the end of the day, are the subnationals the one responsible to put on the ground, to arrive with those ideas and set the pathways to implement those? As you said, in the other way, is the same. Whenever we have a problem with this, the small towns and cities, municipalities, they always come for the subnational government. And we are the one responsible to bring these issues to the federal government. So in both ways, we are in the middle of the process with a huge amount of responsibilities. Not always we have the investments on our hands, the power to decide how to do and where to do. It was agreed by the federal government. The other side, we have the society that put pressure on us. So I don't remember to see someone in the past COPs with this specific kind of representation.
Right.
I have been in touch with the 9 subnational states of the Amazon in Brazil. Long conversation with them. We're trying to set a unique agenda for the COP30. Also having contact with other subnationals in other Amazonian countries like Colombia. I'll be in Colombia at the end of this month. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to put all those guys together, all these governors together, and try to set a link of climate decision among them. You know, as you said, all the calamities, floods, drought. We are facing that more often than ever. In the past 10 years, we had more, in Brazil at least, we had more extreme weather conditions than what we had like for the past 40 years. So this is a very good time to have all these guys together. We're going to have our own space at the blue zone and at the green zone as well. We are planning 60 panels during the 10 days at the blue and at the green. So 120 discussion panels with partners from Brazil, but also from all over the world, and see what kind of agreement we can come out for the post-COP.
Excellent. I think I'm going to look forward to seeing you in Brazil very soon then at one of those sessions, hopefully. But I want to touch upon a very important aspect that you raised on finance, right? And I think it's interesting how you position that the subnational governments are often sandwiched between national agendas and local civil society and communities. On finance specifically, carbon credits and biodiversity credits have really been touted as a silver bullet. But there also have been concerns around integrity and benefit sharing when it comes to their efficacies. And so how would what are your opinion on forest credits and carbon credits that we see? And what more can we do to really channelize this financial instrument to really help local communities monetize a lot of the work that they do around forests?
Well, I'd say that I'm a bit critic of the carbon system, okay? We have been watching that it's working quite well in a few countries in the world, but in terms of the planet, we're still lacking a connection among countries. In Brazil, for example, we only approved our regulated carbon market a few months ago. And we're still lacking the regulation of that. So this is the regulated market. When we talk about the RED Plus market, we still don't know the rules in Brazil, especially related to ITMOs. So we don't know if or how much or how many of the credits we will be able to trade outside Brazil before we fulfill our NDC. So it's still lacking this answer, okay? I don't think that carbon is the silver bullet for all the forest problem in the world, but it is an important driver of compliance, because as long as you need to develop a very wide system of information, this is the way to bring credibility to those communities. The necessary compliance in order to attract investments. I would say that I would rather be discussing biodiversity credit, because carbon, if we believe in the human beings, it's a transitory market. As soon as we become neutral, this will lose the power that it has today. On the contrary of that, biodiversity is something that is perennial. And it's necessary for the life and for the living in this planet, but we are not given the proper attention. This discussion came on the Cali Biodiversity COP last October in Colombia. I hope it gain tracking in the coming years. We are discussing seriously these biodiversity issues in Brazil. That we want to develop along with the carbon markets, okay? Brazil is presenting at the COP a new idea that we call the TFFF, which is the Tropical Forest Forever Fund. It's an initiative among countries, among huge investment funds and sovereign funds in order, let's say it's a good idea, and we have to find a way to develop a system to attract at least $25 billion to start the TFFF. But the amount of money that we need to keep the system operating is
a lot more.
$125 billion US dollars. In order to set a system of payment on environmental service where we can really pay for communities throughout the world to help them to keep tropical forest as it is. So it's a challenge, a huge challenge. It will be the biggest challenge of the Brazilian government throughout the COP and our biggest delivery. Let's see if the world really wants to keep the forest standing. If they want, it's going to be a nice opportunity. At least it's something that we are trying to put together with several countries. We already have the support of important tropical countries as Colombia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Republic of Congo, and many others. More recently, we had the support of a few European countries as well. So we're looking forward for that. So the name will be TFFF. You're going to hear a lot about that.
No, we're already hearing a lot about it, and I want to maybe double click on that a little. And if you could just help us unpack the model a little for our audiences as well, because as far as I understand, the idea is to raise 25 billion from sovereign countries,
Yes.
and then invest that into the capital market and raise about 125, and then you invest that back into your biodiversity communities and projects and activities. So this kind of a public-private kind of a relationship, what are your thoughts on that? Because, we're relying excessively on A, sovereign countries to be able to put in the seed money, and then B, on markets to be able to inflate and enhance that capital base, and then reinvest it back into. So there is a lot of reliance on sovereign countries as well as markets functioning really well in a short span of time.
Well, there are lots of questions that need answers by now, and we are working on that. Of course, we have to convince those sovereign wealth fund to put their money to somebody else manage. In this case, the World Bank.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the first task. Okay. The second one is how do we invest this money in a very secure way in order to pay back.
Yeah.
The third one is how do you do the payment for the countries? Because it's not only the fact like to pay amount of money to Brazil or to Indonesia or to Congo, but how is this money is going to be spread out throughout the communities, forest protection, forest conservation, to recover degraded areas and so on. So there are still several questions to be answered. We are working on that. I don't think it's going to be done by COP, but as is a new idea and a very big one, the good thing now is there are countries looking forward for it, working on that, and let's hope that in the coming year, in the next 12 months, we can set all the compliance standards and maybe give like a big launch of that between Brazil and Australia. Let's hope for that.
Well, I think it's a very laudable and a commendable effort, and I hope we can mobilize the resources and finance that is crucial for the agenda at hand.
At least we're not asking for free money.
Yes.
We are asking for money. We're going to give back some interest rate, of course, not the highest one, but we want to pay back.
Right. Now I think I want to come to the topic which I know is very close to your heart, which is on food systems. You've been engaged on the subject for over 30 years now. So agribusiness in many ways, is considered a driver for deforestation, but also a potential solution. How can we really revolutionize the food systems that we see in, given the food security challenges that have arisen around the world, in global South countries, but also in the West, where production and is coming under massive climate stressors, and we will be going forward at a time. We will be going forward to a time when food scarcity will become very common. So how do you look at really using regenerative agricultural practices or circular economy approaches or other bioeconomy that you mentioned and alluded to earlier as well in this chat, to be able to support and revolutionize the food systems at this point?
Thank you for this question. Well, first of all, we must bear in mind that every and single area that we produce food worldwide had a cover crop before. Could be forest, could be savanna. So everywhere in the world, we deforest what was there and replace it with food crops. Okay? Some countries did that 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Some young countries like Brazil started to do that 50 years ago. Okay? In the past 40 years, we developed worldwide what is known as the Green Revolution. Okay, we had a huge hunger in the world. So the Green Revolution produced the amount of food that today we can say that we don't have hunger because of lacking of food. We still have hunger because of lack of social inequalities or social equalities and distribution and so on. So we have enough food to give to everyone. However, this is not enough anymore. As we know today, about 35% of the total arable land worldwide is degraded, which means that whatever we have done with the chemical revolution, known as Green Revolution, is not enough anymore. So what we need now is what we call the evolutionary revolution, is to bring new technologies, new science on the place, on the ground. And this is called today in overall as regenerative agriculture. That can be different ways, different applications, but it's something really new. And it's a challenge as well. It's a challenge as well, because you have to come to a farmer and say to him, from now on, you're not going to use the practices that you are used to do in the past 50 years that you learned with your father. From now on is different. These are the new practices. So you have to convince that guy to do that, because he will probably ask you, but if I fail implementing this new practice and I lose my crop, who is going to feed my family? Remember that 80% of the farmers worldwide are small farmers, family holders or small farmers. The second task of the regenerative agriculture is the financial aspects. You have to come to the banks or to the funds and say to them, well, I have new practices on food production. I need the same financial support, but you don't know the risks of this new practice. So the banks, they don't have a risk analysis of that. On conventional agriculture, they have all the risk analysis for everything, for beans, for corn, for bananas, for avocados, whatever you present to the banks, they have the risk analysis. But when you present a new agricultural practice, it's zero. And besides that, you also have a climate change analysis that you have to implement on it. So it's the second huge task that you have, is how to convince the financial sector to keep the promotion of new practices on the ground. The third one is science and technology. Science and technology is not available for everyone. It's available for big farmers throughout the world, but not for the medium size and the small scale farmers. So how do we work to implement and to bring these new evolutionary systems developed by science and technology and spread out throughout the world and to change the process in smallholders and small farmers? So these are the three main challenges of this change in the food system. Remember that only in the COP of Egypt in Sharm el-Sheikh, for the first time ever, we had a small conversation on food systems. If you look at the UNFCCC convention, you're probably going to find very few paragraphs talking about agriculture or livestock. Suddenly, the people found out that the food system can be part of the solutions, because science brought us the possibility to have a neutral agriculture, to have a neutral livestock, in certain cases, even a carbon negative agriculture and carbon negative livestock. Science has proved us how good it is to have forests and agriculture in the same area, and livestock as well. You increase your productivity having forest around your area of production. So it's a new concept of agriculture. Very wonderful things are happening worldwide, but it is a learning curve situation. I believe that we're gonna see in the next 20 years a change even more drastic than what we saw in the past 50 years. Everything's going to be different. The technology applied is going to be different. The developments on bio inputs, it's also improving quite a lot. Brazil is already the biggest user of bio input worldwide. So I'm talking about replacement of pesticide, herbicides, insecticide, chemical fertilizers. So we're talking about huge amounts and huge volumes of these products that will be slowly replaced by bio-inputs in the coming years. So big changes are coming, but we still have lots of things to work around.
Right. You know, we talk a lot when we speak of decarbonization. We often refer to the power sector, the transport, or the hard to abate. But agriculture is in fact one of the larger carbon emitting sectors as well. So I'm glad that you sort of laid out a good landscape and pathway and focus to be able to look at regenerative agriculture and more carbon neutral ways of production that could help us perhaps decarbonize the agriculture sector as well. But coming to that, you know, a lot of these conversations do actually take place in the biodiversity COP, maybe not so much in the climate COP like you just said. Is it about time that we look at try and synergize a few agendas and have the COP, you know, the climate COP and the biodiversity COP also talk to each other more intently and actively? Because they're often existing in silos so far.
Yeah, of course. It is about time to bring this for the big discussion. First of all, agriculture is one of the hard to abate areas. Okay, so it is very difficult to convince farmers to change the way they are farming. Doesn't matter if it's in Africa or in the United States or in France. Okay, it's a hard to abate area. Okay. But knowing now that we can be part of the solution, because remember, in the past 30 years, we had science showing the emissions of agriculture. So I would say that we have pretty well mapped emissions around the world in any type of agriculture. But we invested very little money to understand the remotions also, the removal also done by agriculture. So when we start to invest in this kind of science in Brazil, especially with livestock, you know, we have a severe problem with methane coming from the cattle, and we started to implement systems, new pasture systems, and so on, and measuring emissions and removals. And we found out that it is possible to have a neutral agriculture and neutral livestock. I remember last year in New York, during the New York Climate Week, we had this meeting with, I don't know, around 15 scientists at the Columbia University. And we talk a lot about the emissions, and someone raised the question about the removals. And all those scientists in place said, well, we are, let's say, in the 20% initial aspects to understand the real removals from agriculture. So if you look at the world today, we know that around 20 to 25% of all emissions come from the agricultural land use change sector. But as soon that we start to apply the removals as well and do the balance, I believe in the next 20 to 30 years, we're going to see a big change on that. Knowing that this area can be really a part of the solution. Let me give you a good example of that. Look at Brazil. 1/3 of our electric power comes from biomass.
Yeah.
That comes from agriculture. Okay? More than 50% of our fuels are biofuels, either ethanol or biodiesel. But there is something that, because when we have to set removals and emissions, we use the United Nations path, okay? And using that, when you look to the electric power system in Brazil, all the removals is set on the energy pillar. Okay, the removals are there. But the emissions are set in the agriculture pillar. So the agricultural system keeps the emissions. The energy sector is the one who take the advantage of the removals. The same with ethanol, the same with biodiesel. So even the way that we measure this five sectors that done as the United Nations ask us, for us is still wrong.
It's flawed,
So in Brazil now we are trying to implement a new system where instead of 5, we have 7 areas of calculation of emissions and removals. Okay, some people are really mad with that in Brazil because they think we should keep the world standard for that. But I think it's a good idea. It's a good idea to bring to the table the real calculation on removals. We have in Brazil 130 million hectares under pasture lands. So if we manage this pasture land in a proper way, the amount of carbon removals, CO2 removals that we're gonna see, it's tremendous and can change even the way we look at the carbon emissions in Brazil today.
That's actually a very, very interesting point because, and I completely laud Brazil for being, for really pushing for this and creating their own matrices which are more representative of global south countries, because most of the global south countries are agrarian in nature relatively compared to the west, and the fact that you're coming up with these real calculations on removals will be extremely transformational in how the developing countries' contribution is looked at in the carbon removal space as well. I think I want to now come to my last question to you, which is in your opinion, how would what are the key matrices and milestones that you are expecting to see at the COP that would be a determinant factor in its success? So what are those key milestones and matrices that, would define success for you at the COP? And how do you actually hope that the successive COPs, whether it's in Australia, perhaps Nigeria after, and hopefully India after that, will be able to build continuity and momentum on some of the ideas put forward at Brazil and the agendas put forth?
I think the Brazilian COP is going to be a starting point of a big change worldwide. It's going to be the first time that we're going to see 4 COPs having in the global south. So Brazil, Australia, Nigeria, and India. Also, countries that have similarity in their economic agenda: agriculture, mining, energy. Also countries with huge social challenges. So now it's the time for us to set our own model of development. We have been drinking knowledge produced in the global north. Now it's time for us to build our own knowledge, our own metrics, our own methodology. Look at the agribusiness sector. Most of the methodologies that analyze agriculture worldwide were produced in the global north. It's a different kind of soil. It's a different kind of temperature. So now it's time for us, tropical countries, to develop our own tropical regenerative agriculture system. So this is where BRICS help us. This is where meetings like the G20 discussing bioeconomy. These are the new trends that we can foresee in the coming years, that finally the global south realized that we have to build our own way of development according to our needs, according to our situation, according to our social challenges. Just one brief story. I was in Germany a couple years ago talking about climate change. And I was really mad in that day discussing the EU directive on deforestation. And this person at the other side of the table asked me, when you leave your home in the morning, don't you see the effects of climate change? I said, yes, I see. But before I see the effects, I see lots of homeless people around. I see lots of poverty. I see lots of misery, So the pathway for development in my country is different from your country. Germany already did your job in the past many hundreds of years. We are a very young country. We are only 500 years old. So we still have a lot of challenges to know. So for us, the smart thing is how to balance the inputs fighting climate change at the same time that we reduce poverty, that we reduce misery. I don't believe in a clean and green world living in the same time with poverty and misery. So this is our challenge of the Global South. How do we tackle the social instability that is affecting us in a different pathway of development?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Brito, for all your great insights. And I want to also, before we end, congratulate Brazil for choosing Belém to be the destination for hosting the conversation, because I know a lot of people have been, complaining that it's not in a big metro city. But I think it's extremely commendable that, Brazil has managed to take the conversation to the heart of the debate, which is our forests. And in terms of not just the dialogue, but also in terms of geography. And I think it would just make the whole ideas and the conversations even more palpable and even more real. And cannot wait for what all you have in store for us in November.
In the past 30 years of my life, I've been traveling around the world, dozens of countries, and in each one of them, people talk to me about the Amazon. So now you are all welcome to the Amazon. Please come, see locally, meet the people, eat our food. It's great food from the Amazon region. Feel the heat and the humid. So understand the importance of the rainforest, the importance of our rivers, the importance of this biome to the world. So come on, guys. It's only 10 days. We don't have 6-star hotels. We don't have this much of 5,000 hotels. But probably we have a very warm people that will be waiting for you guys, hug you guys, and give you a wonderful time in Belém. So please come to Belém in November.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
My pleasure.